This is the undestroyable wound glitch that happened to the chained Arkveld in the Monster Hunter Wilds second beta, and God bless it. It was fun, and I took a lot of clips, and I started realizing something about the damage numbers and the damage ticks. So I got really curious about the mechanisms and the mechanics behind wounds, creating them, and how to best use them. And that's what this video is going to be. I took this curiosity into the lab, and I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know how many hits does it take to open up a wound, or what type of hits. I wanted to know once you have destroyed a wound, is there resistances? How much are the resistances? How long does it take to build a second wound? I also wanted to know what are all my focus strikes? What are the purpose of all my focus strikes? What are the damage ticks that correlate in the lab and out in the field? What's actually happening when I use this weapon? Like I said, I wanted to know all my focus strikes and when to best use them. What are the damage numbers? What are the damage numbers when I pop one wound? What are the damage numbers when I pop two wounds with multiple or different focus strikes to study those things and understand what's happening? What happens if I pop all three wounds? All those questions and many, many more are going to be answered in this video. If you enjoyed the information, please like, comment, and subscribe, and let's go. The first thing I needed to do was to come up with some way to test how wounds are created and their resiliency. You know how other Monster Hunters, you have Poison Blast. Once it procs, it takes a while to proc again. Well, I found that the Crimson combo in Reg Gauge will take you from no damage to your first wound created in one single combo. So that's what I was using as my standard candle. I went ahead and started doing that sequence, one Crimson combo with no damage to create the first wound. And then I wanted to see what is its resiliency for the second wound. How long does it take? How much damage do I have to do? And what I found really surprised me. I was just whapping away with this Crimson combo over and over again, and I knew something was wrong because due to that Arkveld glitch, I was actually hosting, so it was never appearing for me, but I was creating wounds for other people to get the glitch, and it wasn't taking me this many hits to create wounds. So I realized that it's not something to do with damage or number of hits or anything like that. It has to be some other mechanism. So then, same situation, I started off with 0 damage, 1 Crimson combo to create my first wound, and then I thought, well, maybe if I create another wound, there's a certain aspect maybe that correlates into the resiliency of when another wound could be created. Or actually, I was just curious at first, would it take more than 1 Crimson combo? But no, it only took 1 Crimson combo to open up that second wound. I don't really know why I went back to whapping on this thing, but what I did notice is it took far less Crimson combos in the first sequence than I showed you after I had destroyed that second wound for this second wound on the initial wound to show up again. And then it hit me. It's a timer. It's based on a timer. So what I did was same situation, started off with no damage, got my first wound with 1 Crimson combo, went to the side, went to another spot I could create a wound, busted up another wound with 1 Crimson combo, did my focus strikes, of course. Then I went to the third area, and I started doing my Crimson combo again. It should have been 1 Crimson combo. I kind of plinked off the end there. And I got my wound, and I did my focus strike. And then I went back to my original one, and watch this. Back to 1 Crimson combo to open up the wound. So what happened? It was time. It's roughly about 30 seconds I'm putting together, somewhere in that neighborhood, from the time that you first create a wound, that another wound cannot be created in that spot. So the most efficient way for you to hunt and create these high damage opportunities is to learn all the spots that a monster can have a wound created, and cycle through them throughout the fight, or cycle through 3. Go to like the head, a limb, a wing, something like that, and cycle through those 3 wound opportunities, and you can have perpetual wounds going. And this is going to be phenomenal for my understanding of the game and how to approach these monsters. Now this is going to be able to formulate a plan. Wounds are on timers. I want to pop one and come back to the original one in the amount of time it takes for that 30 seconds to eclipse. This could be game breaking in how you actually approach the fights from here on out. So now that I understand wounds a little bit better, I want to know everything about my focus strikes. And first things first is this is a focus strike used on a weak point attack instead of a wound, and it didn't give me any meter when I successfully hit it. So I don't know if that's a glitch and it's meant to be that way, or it's meant to be that way, but it doesn't behave the same as a focus strike that hits a wound, so I'm going to treat this a little bit differently and keep this off this video, basically. I am looking forward to when the game is released to see if this is a glitch. I kind of feel like it is, and it's supposed to behave the same way, but this is what a focus strike on a wound does. For every wound that you hit with your focus strike, you get 1 bar of meter. So if I was on white, I would get to red. For example, after doing a Helmbreaker and a Spirit Release, I was already on yellow there. But yeah, the other thing I want to point out about the training room is their damage numbers are wrong. This shows as a total focus strike damage of 165. It has 2 hits that are 30.6, 1 that's 11.8, 2 that are 40.47, and 1 that's a 30, the pop at the end. If you total that up, that's a total of 197. It's always supposed to be this for the focus strikes. That sequence, the first 3 hits are always the same. The second 2 hits are always 47, and the third pop is 30. However, I think the pop is not including another physical pop that's supposed to happen on wounds. This is the same focus strike, but when the wound pops, that last 30 hit from the previous clip, actually a third physical pop pops up, 34.5. That was represented by the 47s in the previous clip. But I know because when I do a multiple focus strike, the second one also gets that additional 37.6 pop as physical damage on top of the wound pop that the first one wasn't showing. So I think the damage is supposed to actually be higher. But these are my 3 focus strikes. The first one's 197. Second one, the same damage for the first 3 hits, the same animation for all 3. You hit right or left for this one. However, this one ended up being lower. It's supposed to be the same damage, but that second hit did not hit the wound, so the damage was lower, and that will be important later. And this is the other one by holding back. 3 hits, also the same damage, 197. Regardless of what weapon you use or how many focus strike your weapon has, they're all going to follow 3 types of damage components for these wounded focus strikes, and all 3 of my focus strikes consist of pretty much the same damage, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too, and they're all going to have these 3 aspects. The first is the actual focus strike. This can miss depending on how you aim your reticle. You want to put your reticle right on that red dot, and for regardless of which focus strike I do, it's always the same animation and the same 3 hits and the same damage, 30.6, 30.6, and 11.8. And this is the part that actually initiates the animation for the next part. And the next part of your move is going to be some sort of input that you can put to control how many wounds you're going to strike next. This is the neutral. It just goes forward. This is the right or left, and it swipes to the right that I did on this time. And the whole point of this is to hit as many wounds as you can after the initial focus strike. And finally, you have what I call the pop damage. Depending on how many wounds you hit, they're going to pop for some additional damage at the end. And there are some additional damage modifiers in here too, and we're going to slow this down because I really want to make a point about this pop damage. And all 3 focus strikes have the exact same damage if everything hits. Now, this pop damage, I want you to notice that the first wound is always 30, the second wound is always 50, and the third wound that you pop is always 80. So every additional wound that you pop, you're going to get a scaled up damage. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, or if we can even do the math on this end, because it could all change on the release. But the other thing is you have these 2 physical damage pops that happened on the additional 2 wounds I created, and that's the pop that I was speaking of earlier that I think is supposed to happen on the first wound and isn't, but it might not. We'll see how the game actually goes. So now that we have a better understanding of the damage of focus strikes, let's look at each one. If you do have multiple focus strikes, why? Let's find out. So because the 247 damage ticks happen on a single strike, the neutral focus strike is best for a singular wound. You'll never miss the damage opportunity. It can hit multiple wounds, but you just have to line it up just right, and that's going to be hard to do on a writhing monster, you know. The right or left one is the worst one to do on a single wound. The second hit just often misses the wound, so you get reduced damage. It's perfect for 2 wounds. You should never not use it for 2 wounds. And for 3 wounds, when you want to hit the end of the row and then use your swipe to go back towards the rest of the wounds, it's perfect for. This backwards one, you just might miss it on a single wound. I don't know why you would use it. It's not a bad option for 2, depending on your positioning. It's perfect for 3 when you're in the center of the 3 wounds. It's the best option then. I also wanted to show here, and this isn't the best clip, but I could extrapolate some information. I wanted to see what my Helmbreaker with Spirit Release damage would be with no wounds and with wounds. And it's a little hard to aim the Spirit Release because it has a wide range of ticks. But based on, I saw those 20.7s, and the highest hit I get is 31.6 at the end. And I saw where these yellow hits are the ones that are hitting correctly and approximately what they were. So this Helmbreaker, it starts off with more damage because I'm hitting the wounds, and you can see the weakness exploit types notations. But then I missed some of the release, and so it hit some parts that give me reduced damage. But if I correlate the right equation, I guess, of what those damage ticks should have been, this ends up being 2 damage less according to the screen, but it's actually going to be around 200, maybe maximum theoretically 300 more, and I just want you to keep that in mind, because at the end of this video we're going to have a discussion about what this all means and how to use this in the gameplay. Here I want to show that when I pop 2 wounds with a focus strike, the pops are significant. It's not 30 and 50. Well, I mean, it might be that 60% increase or whatever, but it's 177.4 and 295.6, and I don't get the best hit on the initial one, but it turns out it is exactly double what a singular focus strike would have been if you just hit 1, and then if you hit 2 instead, the total damage is going to be right at double, because a single one is 334, 335, and I believe the double one should have been about 670. So it's pretty much that, and I believe the third is going to be triple. This is also going to be important to that conversation we're going to have. So yeah, just keep those numbers in mind, because now we're going to go into what all of this information means on how I should use wounds and how I should fight. Before I get into how to apply all of this into the gameplay, I'd like to offer an invitation to join our squad, Zero Fates. There is a link to our Discord in the descriptions below. Come join us. We're literally, as of right now, over 300 global hunters. We have a couple of really basic rules. We respect and we game. If you can be respectful and you're a gamer, you found your home. We literally have beginners to monster hunters to literal world record holders and everyone in between, and we have people doing things like I'm doing with this video constantly. We're always examining the game, we're breaking it down, we're testing builds, we're testing mechanics. This is not something that just I am doing in our group. It's many of us. So if this sounds interesting, if you've ever wanted to have a conversation about latent power with somebody, you found your home. You know what I mean? Anyways, so the first thing I want to pay attention to the mechanics of wounds is I want to learn every spot that I can create a wound on a monster's body. That's really going to help me, because now that I know that they're on timers, I want to cycle through. For example, if I create a wound on the monster's head, I want to break it, get my big damage from that, and then I want to move on to another part of the body, open up another wound, give that timer some time for the initial wound to reappear. But also, things like flinches and knockdowns happen when you bust open these wounds, and big damage. So if you're cycling through the monster's wounds to constantly be able to create wounds and create those damage and knockdown opportunities, you're just keeping your DPS very high, and you're always going to have, successful hunts where you're in charge. And that's the way I like to approach these hunts. This isn't about speed running, This is about how do I use the mechanics to bully monsters. Now that I understand how the scaling of hitting multiple wounds works as well, and this is on the low end because this is the practice room, which I think is glitched out and not showing all the damage, of course, but it's going to really help my decision-making process in some situations. For example, this Helmbreaker is not a very good Helmbreaker. I get some additional damage because I'm hitting wounds, but I'm probably going to break some of those wounds, and it's just not the best way to approach a situation where I'm in red gauge and I have multiple wounds available, because of the scaling I just showed on the previous clip and how much damage you can get by hitting 3 wounds. It's about 400, and I'm only increasing my damage up approximately 200 if I'm hitting those wounds with everything hitting perfectly. You know what I mean? The better option is to go ahead and do a focus strike, clear out all the wounds, reset all those timers so they can start beginning to form again, and then to do a Helmbreaker like this without the wounds, because now all these hits and my spirit release and everything, it's starting to affect those areas that I can start building up wounds again, and this is even doubly so with this. It's looking like hitting multiple focus strikes is going to do double the damage as single ones, and that's going to mean a lot for multiplayer. And I want to talk about this, and this is where the conversation is going to get a little theoretical, but there is some proof and some testing I've done as well. So let me explain about multiple hitting wounds with multiplayer. You'll have to forgive me a bit. I deleted some clips from the first beta on some testing I did about hitting multiple focus strikes. It is in a previous video that I have released called Why Monster Hunter Wilds Will Be the Greatest Game of All Time. And in that video, there's a couple of different occasions where we land multiple offset attacks and multiple focus strikes. One time in particular, it was a Chotacabra. I landed a focus strike on his right arm, and a teammate landed a focus strike on his left arm. Now, given that if I hit 1 wound, I should get back 1 bar of gauge, I was down to white because I had done a Helm Splitter with a spirit release, so I lost 2 bars. I only hit 1 focus strike on 1 wound, but I got 2 bars of gauge back. So that was really interesting. So that showed that on multiple focus strikes on separate wounds, I was getting the benefit of the 2 bars as if I hit 2 wounds, even though I didn't. I just hit 1. So I'm not quite sure what this is going to mean for the game, because one of 2 things is going to apply here. Either when we do multiple focus strikes, I described earlier that when you do the poke hit, you only get the poke hit on the initial wound. You don't get it on the subsequent wounds because that gets pops and other hits from your other animations. But if we can time it in ways where multiple people hit focus strikes, then you're going to be able to get all of the initial hit wound damage plus the focus damage of the wounds. And I really believe that you're going to get these multiple wound pops that we're talking about, that 177.5 up to the 295.6, that scaling. I think if we hit separate wounds and both use our ability to hit multiple wounds, I think we're going to each get those pops. I don't know for sure, I haven't tested that, but that's what I'm going to test on release. I'm going to test everything in this video again when the game releases, because I want to verify this information, but I feel pretty confident in everything that I'm presenting so far today. So yeah, now that's one alternative. The other alternative is you don't get the multiple pops. Let's say 2 people hit 2 different wounds, and then you use your maneuverability to actually hit both wounds, both of you do, and one of you gets the multiple pops and one of you doesn't. It either gets 1 pop or maybe even no pop. I don't think that's going to be the case, again, because I was able to get the 2 bars of red when we did do it that way. So I believe we are going to be able to get multiple pops. But if you can't, then I believe that's going to mean the most efficient way in a group to approach multiple wounds is going to be one person popping as many wounds as possible to get the double, triple, quadruple effect, maybe with a bow or something like that. So then that would probably, I don't want to say meta, I hate that word, but this video isn't about finding meta. It's just finding what are the mechanics and what are the best way I can use them, and not flawless ways to use them, but just really get into using them. And so if that's the case, then it's going to be best for a group to individually not individually attack focus strikes and have one person try to destroy as many wounds as possible. Now, I know that being said requires a lot of coordination, and I really wouldn't worry about that. If you have wounds available in the middle of a fight, always go ahead and take them. You don't ever want to just leave them. You want to take them, you want to destroy them, you want to reset those timers. That's going to be to your best benefit. There are going to be some situations where if you can coordinate focus strikes with your entire team, there are going to be some windows that we can. Let's talk about that right now. just to be clear, the 177.4 and the 295.6 pops that you see on this video, that's the one I'm talking about. If these will occur for multiple players, if we strike different wounds and then aim our weapons to hit multiple wounds, and both of these pops are happening for both of us, then it will be meta to have multiple people set up focus strikes. One of the most obvious ways you can do it is with a mount. You're going to create some wounds. Generally, what I like to do is create as many wounds as I can, leave the head wound open. I usually bring it down with the back wound. And you had some time too, so maybe you can work on opening up some wounds on either wings, legs, tails, something like that, and try to coordinate a strike if you choose to. You got other kind of knockdowns like this pillar knockdown that could create a similar situation. Traps, of course, shock or pitfall traps. I think part of this would depend on if there's some wounds already and some communication with your teammates, of course, and even sneak attacks. Maybe mid-fight, he's got a couple of wounds already on him, get in your gillies and be able to strike them all at the same time instead of doing a sneak attack. Just things to consider. So if it is that case, there are going to be some openings for you guys to set up some massive damage as a team. Alright, I think that's about all we got time for now. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this information, and I will, like I said, I'm going to retest all of this, and this is just what I do, people. I love gaming. I love experimenting with games, so when Wilds comes out, anything that's testable, whether it's builds, damage, resistances, iframes, things like that, me and the group, the squad, Zero Feints, everybody's going to be working on this stuff, so come join us. If you're interested in this kind of stuff and you're a true gamer, come join us. Really, my call for civility and respect in gaming really originated as a call to female gamers. Women gamers have just been treated really, really poorly throughout. I'm a 46-year-old gamer, and I've been gaming since the dawn of console generations. And I've always noticed the lack of participation in chat forums and other forums with women gamers, and we know why. Some of the treatment towards them is absolutely despicable, and we're here to stand up to that and not allow that, whether you're woman or a different race or a different sexual identity or all that stuff. We're here to respect and game, and that's about it. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed it. See ya.